So I stopped making these, partly because I don't care and partly because neither do you. Plus I wasn't really expecting much from this movie because next to the last one, nothing was gonna look good. And Jesus Christ, this movie is awesome. So here I am, enjoy my pirated footage. Across the Spider-Verse is the only superhero movie I've loved since Infinity War, and the only Spider-Man movie I've loved that isn't the first one. I don't think I can adequately explain just how perfect of a sequel this is, or even how perfect of a movie it is. It takes every single thing about Spider-Man, all Spider-Man, and examines it under a microscope. Fan service is balanced with plot, which is balanced with emotion. Not getting into spoilers, but there's stuff with canon that literally takes everything related to the character of Spider-Man and uses it as the main plot in a way that's just, I don't even know how to explain it without spoiling the movie, but it's so cool. This is what Rick and Morty thinks it is. It's not tropey, it's not cliche, it's not meta, it's all of those and none of those, and it's all tied together with a surprisingly dark tone, and we end up with, like, the most interesting and unique plot to a superhero movie, like, maybe ever. This movie is the definition of subverting expectations, and not in the way you're thinking. Miles literally takes every expectation about being Spider-Man and throws it out of the window, putting the universe at risk in order to, well, that's a spoiler, but you get what I'm saying. Doctor Strange 2 wishes it could make a multiverse movie this good. The best thing about this movie being 2 parts, there is a worse thing too, we'll get to that, is that they didn't need to rush through the plot. In fact, the actual plot doesn't really start until like halfway through, but it's not like the first part is boring at all, far from it. In that time, we get to examine every single character and the dynamics between them, especially between Miles and Gwen and Miles and his parents. And that last one is really important because it drives the whole plot forward once it gets started. Miles is just as good as he was in the last movie. If you think about it, he's kind of in the wrong about the whole breaking the canon thing, but you're not meant to totally agree with him, you're meant to sympathize with him, which we absolutely do. Again, that's what the first half of the movie is for. He's been getting told what to do by everyone for like 3 hours of combined movie at this point, and now everyone's telling him that he has to let the canon play out. I know this all sounds very cheesy and very dumb and very Rick and Morty if you haven't seen it yet, but I promise it does work, and the other characters are great. The dad is even better in this one somehow, and his relationship with Miles is put under so much stress, and even more, the mom is actually a real character in this one. Once again, the first half of this movie is making us care about everyone involved and setting the stakes for the second half. It's just good writing. And Spider-Man 2099 is just insane. That's the only word I can think of to describe him. I mean, I knew he and Miles weren't really gonna vibe with each other, but it's more than that. This guy is downright scary. He's very much in the right morally speaking, so it's not like we don't get it, but we're not meant to disagree with him, we're just meant to care about Miles more, which is basically the exact opposite of what I said for Miles. And so Oscar Isaac is just doing his absolute best, playing the most unhinged and aggressive character in either of these movies, and it's so cool. I mean, except for that Kingpin guy, but, you know, who cares about him? And his whole team of Spider people is cool too. The guys from the last one aren't really there except for Gwen and Peter B. Parker for a bit, and he's cool still, and it was nice to see one version of Spider-Man have a successful family life, but the rest of them aren't around, but that's fine because the new guys are still cool. Everyone thought Sony was gonna do a love triangle with Gwen and Miles and this Jimi Hendrix Spider-Man, but they didn't, so crisis averted, and he's pretty okay in his own right, which leaves Gwen. She's the main character in this one who actually receives a good amount of her own screen time, and the first 20 minutes actually revolve around her, and oh my golly gee whiz. The start of this movie filled me with more stress and sadness than basically all of Phase 4. We get to see more about her Peter dying, but more importantly, her relationship with her dad. Her relationship with Miles got the right amount of time and never felt shoehorned in, and overall, it just makes the audience actually care about her now, like a lot. Maybe I'd care a bit more if my pirated copy didn't hit me with
क्या आप कुछ बड़ा खरीदने का सपना देख रहे हैं? One expat के साथ जीतकर इसे
Can we talk about the stuff they do with the colors and the scenes with Gwen and her dad? Like, look at the backgrounds here. What? This is so cool. Oh yeah, and the animation. Isn't that like something about these movies that people talk about sometimes, occasionally? Yes. Yes, it is. And this movie actually looks better than the last one. Every set looks awesome. India, New York has a cool multi-layered Coruscant thing going on. The Spider Hub or whatever it's called has this MC Escher style, which is just so creative and actually really fits. And Nueva York is actually beautiful. All the movements and characters and the whole comic book aesthetic, all of that is still preserved. Everything great about the last movie is still here, plus a bunch of new things that I probably haven't even noticed yet. The fights are so well made too. We get one in the first couple minutes that's more dramatic and tense than most climaxes to superhero movies. And the train scene is straight up the coolest thing I've seen in a movie all year. Basically, every 2D and 3D animation technique ever developed is probably somewhere in this movie. In a way, this is like the culmination of all animated movies. Yeah, I know that's kind of over the top, but seriously, this is the best looking movie I may have watched ever. And the Spot is also very cool. It's really hard to talk about him without going into spoilers, but he had a cool origin, he's funny sometimes, his powers are cool, and he looked even cooler after he went into that thing. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. This would not have worked in live action. And the best part is, we haven't even seen that much of him yet. Much more of him is to come in the next one. But therein lies the problem. Probably the only problem this movie has. Because this is a part 1, some things do suffer from part 1 syndrome. Like this guy, for example. And probably the ending. Don't get me wrong, this was the best cliffhanger ending since, yeah, Infinity War. 2 plot twists in a row here. The first one you maybe could have seen coming because it had one clue, and the second was just for shock value, but they both worked and it was great. But I feel like a lot of stuff after the train scene, which is basically the climax, was meant to be the start of part 2, and they moved it over just to build up the hype, resulting in a, longer than average fall in action. I get that some people think that makes the end of the movie feel dragged out or whatever, but I don't think having a plot structure that doesn't strictly adhere to the norm or whatever really matters that much, considering we're dealing with a Spiderverse movie. Let's say it was moved here to build up the hype. Okay, it worked. Beyond the Spider-Verse is the first movie I've actually been excited to see since, before COVID. It didn't feel particularly bloated or overly long to me. It just felt like one of those movies that you keep thinking about for hours after you watch them. I'm making this Saturday night, hopefully gonna release on Sunday. I watched this Saturday morning. I watched this morning. I wrote the whole script today. I made the video today. I processed it today. That's how much I care about this. That about sums it up, really. People were saying for a while that No Way Home was the definitive Spider-Man movie, and I get why they were saying that, because it had a bunch of Spider-Man, even though Spider-Verse 1 did too, and it was way better. But whatever the case, Across the Spider-Verse is now, without a doubt, the definitive Spider-Man movie. This movie just gets Spider-Man and explores Spider-Man with a level of precision that the MCU couldn't hope to do. I'm confident that the last movie can't possibly be so bad that this trilogy isn't anything but the best Spider-Man series of all time. Please don't prove me wrong about that, by the way. There's emotion packed into every part of this movie. Not a single second is wasted, despite being longer. I was fully interested for the whole thing, something even the first one failed at for a few minutes at a time. Yes, you heard that right. I think this movie is better than the first one. It's just grander and epicer in every way, and I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. Maybe an 11, I don't know. I haven't made one of these in a while, but I vaguely remember my ratings always being garbage, so don't hold me to that, but I don't think I'll change my mind when I say that this movie is probably my second favorite animated movie of all time, and most definitely in the top 5 movies of all time. But I'm not making one of these for goddamn Elemental or freaking Toy Story 5 or Inside Out 2. Wake me up from my eternal slumber when something else good happens. Okay, subscribe, bye.